Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Time for a weekly chat with former Congressman John Campbell, architect of most of California's disabilities. I am so glad he was in the legislature, so he's responsible for it all. I was thinking of you yesterday when Steve Hilton announced for governor down in Huntington Beach, John Campbell. Given your long record, you must not be on Hilton's bandwagon. What are you, with him or are you against him?
You know, when I did guest host for you on this show a couple of months ago, I had Steve Hilton on for 2 or 3 segments, and we talked about...
he didn't know about your record of being in the California legislature?
Yeah, he probably didn't. He probably had no idea who I was. You know, didn't know I'd actually caused all these problems, as you pointed out. That all the stuff that I put in place when I left the legislature in 2005 has totally wrecked California 20 years later. You are really the only savant who has figured that out, you know?
I have a very methodical connect the dots, jawbone connects to the ear bone. You know, I got it.
Yeah, okay. But so we'll see. I mean, you know, you are currently in California, and so am I right now. And I mean, it is amazing how messed up this place is and how hard it is to mess it up. I mean, it has so many natural advantages, geographic and everything else, demographic and everything, all kinds of natural advantages. But the leagues they've gone to lengths they've gone to mess it up are amazing, and they're continuing to do that day by day. I just tweeted out today, I don't know whether you saw that the legislature, one of the committees in the legislature just passed one of the various slavery reparations bills that they're working on. Now, this is a state that's bankrupt, spent $10 billion on illegal alien health care, spent more billions on the train to nowhere that goes nowhere and doesn't build anything, on homeless things that haven't helped homeless, burns the place down, and yet they want to give reparations in a state that never had slaves or slave owners. I mean, this stuff, you can't make this stuff up. You can.
So
they're still doing
whenever anyone gives me would you believe California did X? I always, absolutely, I believe California did X. Let me ask you about a specific thing that I asked Steve Hilton about. Over the weekend, the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I had dinner with Bob and Toby Waldorf, old friends of ours. Bob went to UCLA a decade before you did, and the entire year at UCLA, the entire tuition was $400. The Fetching Mrs. Hewitt went to the University of California, Davis, about the same time you were at UCLA, and her tuition was $212 a quarter. So I'm just curious, do you remember what you paid for UCLA back in the day?
I do, exactly. I paid $208.50 a quarter. And for my I was only there 3 years. I had a lot of advanced placement credits when I came in. And so $208.50 a quarter. And for those of you who don't understand quarters, the quarter system is something that Ronald Reagan put the University of California on back when he was governor in the 1960s. So you have 4 quarters in a year, including a summer quarter. So if you didn't take the summer school quarter, you did 3 quarters rather than 2 semesters. But yeah, so add that up, and it was what, $624.
You're on the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt plan. Now, I always like to ask Californians, because I went to college at the same time. I know what Harvard cost in the 70s, $12,000 a year. My dad kept the receipts and made sure I got every one of them. So I know, I don't know how Harvard was at $12,000 a year in 78, and University of California was at $600. But I even don't understand more how nobody's kids can get into the UC system, and if they do, it costs a ridiculous amount of money. How did that happen?
The University of California is a state institution, and so for residents, the theory has always been that your taxes pay for a bunch of that education, and that's why it is so cheap, or was so cheap, that you didn't have to pay it all because your taxes paid. And in fact, I remember I was a good student in high school. And high schools, as you probably remember back then, and maybe they still do, kind of evaluated themselves on their matriculation. How many people got into Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford? And I remember when the headmaster called me in and he said, "You're apparently going to UCLA." And I said, "Yes." And they said, "You can get into Harvard, you can get into any university in the country, why are you going to UCLA? And I said, well, in part, I'm a Southern Californian. I like Southern California. I've heard it's cold on the East Coast, and I don't want to go there. And I said, but the other reason is my parents already paid for my tuition through their taxes. And I want to take advantage of what they already paid for and not make them pay for it again. And so that was the theory, and that's why it was that way. Of course, now what they've done is they've allowed illegal aliens. This is another insane. If you're from Arizona and you go to school at the University of California, you have to pay out-of-state tuition.
May I give you the note on what it costs? If you're out of state, it costs in 2024 $44,524. And in 2024, if you're in state and you get in, it costs $13,747. I don't know how many percentage more than that is than $600, but it's a lot more. It's a lot more than inflation, John Campbell.
It is. Well, if you're an illegal alien, which do you pay? Do you know that?
In state.
You pay in state. That's correct. You pay. So if you're from Arizona, you pay a U.S. citizen. You pay
$44,000.
If you're an illegal alien that happens to reside in California at the moment, you pay in state. I mean, this stuff is
that's so crazy.
This stuff is it is absolutely crazy. And I don't know if it's still true, but I about 10 years ago, when I looked at it, nothing that we consume, eat, or do has gone up more in cost since 1970 than higher education. It's gone up more than housing, more than energy, more than insurance, more than food, more than anything else you can think of. And is it better? Are you getting any value for that, for a greater increase in cost than anything else? I would argue that it's considerably
less. Now, my question, we lost our signal here for a second, so we'll keep talking. I'll talk to you after the break on the second segment. Do you think Hilton should run on this? Because I talk to parents, and they're always angry that their kids can't get in to a UC, much less Cal Poly or Cal Tech. They can't get in.
Yeah. Is that something Hilton should bring up? Sure.
Yeah.
But is it something, a primary thing to run on? Look, what are Republicans, registered Republicans in California, 28% or something like that? You need a lot of people that are not registered Republicans to vote for you to win an election in California. And we've talked about how elections in California, there's vote harvesting and there's all kinds of illegals that vote. And so you can't win by 500 votes and actually win. You have to win by probably 5 points or 10 or more in order to offset all the
you have to assemble what I call a coalition of the justifiably aggrieved. And when we come back from break, we will talk about who's in the coalition of the justifiably aggrieved in California and other blue states. And my answer is going to be taxpayers whose kids can't go to school. Then we're going to talk about people who paid for those homeless bonds in L.A. that didn't actually build any kind of housing for the homeless. Then we're going to talk about we got a lot to talk about with a man who caused all the problems, former Congressman and California State Legislator John Campbell. Let her face at first just go sleep. Turn the water. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That's one of John Campbell's favorite songs. It's about his years at USC. During the break, John Campbell was both a UCLA grad and a USC grad. I went and looked up the tuition at your other alma mater, John Campbell, the Honorable John Campbell. Do you know what USC tuition, room, and board costs now per year?
It's got to be close to $100,000, I would think.
It's over $100,000.
Oh, okay.
So what is wrong with this state? How can anyone get away with this stuff?
Well, first, one thing, a now disgraced and no longer there president of USC a few years ago said in one of their Board of Trustees meetings, according to a member of that board whom I know, that he wanted USC to be the highest tuition school in the country because he believed that people would equate the amount of the tuition with the quality of the education. And he felt if they were more than Harvard and Stanford, that people would equate them as being higher. This person left the board shortly thereafter and said this stuff is nuts. So there's a lot of, and USC is a private institution, unlike UCLA, but a lot of nutty things there. But we were talking before the break.
I want to go back to the coalition of the justifiably aggrieved. I don't want people to live on grievances, but a lot of people in California have legitimate grievances.
Right, and that is the way you're going to convince, the Republican brand has been seriously damaged in California for 20, 30 years, whatever. And there's all kinds of examples of people who in a non-partisan race win, and then they run in the same jurisdiction with an R after their name and they've lost. And so that is a symbol that being a Republican is a damaged brand. So one of the things Steve Hilton would need to do, first of all, is rise above that. But I think right now you'd have to say that the Democratic brand in California is starting to damage itself, given what's going on. And in terms, to me, as far as I'm concerned, looking at it, what are the big issues that upset people here in California that are bipartisan? There's not about anything that's partisan at all, but that everybody sees. Crime, okay? They've been so soft on crime here, and they continue to do that. And so everyone sees and feels the uptick in crime. Homelessness, which, something like 50% of all the homeless in the country are in this one state. But they've spent billions of dollars trying to take care of the problem, and it only makes it worse. So that's part of it. Another is corruption. And just simple mismanagement. The whole fire situation in Los Angeles, the train to nowhere in the Central Valley, the homeless situation. These are all very evident examples of either mismanagement or corruption or both. And that affects everybody. Like, well, wait, you spent $10 billion on this, and what did we get? I think then the education thing, I think that you mentioned, okay, I have a student, I should get in-state tuition. I'd like to save that money when I send my child to college, but I can't get in-state because I'm white or I'm heterosexual or whatever it is. The broader issue is that you see now that they spent $10 billion on healthcare for illegal aliens, $10 billion, and some of just in 1 year. And some of it, they don't know where it went. But all kinds of services that citizens need and get are being cut back. And that's another thing is, well, shouldn't we look at, and I don't think you denigrate the illegal aliens. That doesn't work with a lot of these people in California. But you say, look, shouldn't the citizens come first? Shouldn't the people who pay taxes, who are residents here, shouldn't they come first? If we're going to take care of illegal aliens, okay, but shouldn't we first take care of our own? Because we're not doing that. And that is another issue. And then, of course, high taxes is the other. Well, actually, before high taxes, I'd put cost of living. And the Democrats in Sacramento recognize this. Their number one priority, they say, this year is to deal with the high cost of living in California. Give you a couple of examples. Gasoline right now is $5 a gallon for 87 octane. That's more than double what it is in most states. Electricity costs here are 5 times, not 50%, 5 times what mine are in Arizona per kilowatt hour. Okay, 5 times. And you go to the store, Oreos cost more because of all the regulation and other things that have gone in. So the Democrats have recognized that people are saying it costs too much to live here. And I've got my friend who lives in Iowa. They make half the money I do, and they own a house, and they've got all this stuff, and I don't have that. So dealing with that, the Democrats want to subsidize everything. That doesn't work. Deregulate everything. That will work.
I hope Steve Hilton is listening. If not, I hope we'll send him the YouTube video of this. If you sign up at Hugh Hewitt YouTube, you can see Congressman and responsible party John Campbell for the decline of the Golden State. He'll be back next week to own more of the disaster that is California. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh.